Want her dead, David. We've been through this. Hi, friends. Welcome to Verona Investigates Women Who Kill, Season 2. I'm Verona, and this season we'll be diving into dark and complex minds of Canadian women who've crossed the line that most of us could never imagine crossing. Today we'll begin with a story that shocked Toronto, a story of teenage jealousy, manipulation, and murder. This is the story of Melissa Todorovic, a 15-year-old girl whose words turned into a deadly command. In 2008, 17-year-old Stefanie Rengel was lured outside on New Year's Day and killed. Her murderer? An ex-boyfriend, but the mastermind, prosecutor said, was a girl Stefanie barely knew. Her name was Melissa Todorovic. She was just 15 years old, and what happened that night would raise questions we're still asking today. How far can manipulation go? And when children commit adult crimes, how should they be punished? In the quiet suburban streets of Mississauga, Ontario in 2007, teenagers were living their lives like any other, texting, going to classes, hanging out at the mall. But behind the glow of flip phones and MSN Messenger, a toxic love story was unfolding. Melissa was only 15. Stephen Truscott had been exonerated. Paul Bernardo was in the headlines again, and Canada thought it had seen enough horror. But what happened next would come from a place no one expected: a teenage romance gone fatally wrong. Historical side note: in 1959, 14-year-old Stephen Truscott from Clayton, Ontario, was convicted of rape and murder of 12-year-old Lynn Harper. Despite only being a teenager, he was sentenced to hang, the youngest person ever given the death penalty in Canada. That's right, Canada used to have a death penalty. And this was 1959, not that long ago. The conviction was based on weak circumstantial evidence and a flawed autopsy timeline. After years of appeal and public outcry, his sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. Decades later, new forensic reviews proved the evidence was unreliable. And finally, in 2007, Stephen Truscott was formally acquitted, ending one of Canada's most notorious wrongful convictions. I believe it was the Innocence Project that helped clear his name. Melissa was dating David Bagshaw, a 17-year-old boy with a reputation of being reckless but loyal. The relationship had always been intense, passionate, volatile, and full of jealousy. Like many teenage couples, they broke up and got back together often. But this time, things took a darker turn. When Melissa found out David had been intimate with another girl, Stefanie, her jealousy consumed her. It was New Year's Eve, 2007. Stefanie was spending the night at home with her family. She was 14, vibrant, quirky, artistic. She had recently started at Rosedale High School in the arts program and was full of life. That night, she sang Avril Lavigne's Slipped Away on the karaoke machine her parents had rented. Her mother, Patricia Hugh, remembers that they all made a point of being together that night. Because soon enough, Patricia thought her older kids would want to spend New Year's with their friends. It was a cozy, ordinary night, the kind of night that should have ended with laughter and resolutions, but not for the Rangel family. It would become the last night they've ever spent together. The next day, January 1st, 2008, was a cold and snowy day. Stefanie went to a friend's house in the afternoon, then came home before dinner. At 6:08 p.m., her phone rang. The number was blocked. The voice on the other end sounded familiar, upset, maybe even scared. It asked her to come outside. She thought it was her ex-boyfriend, Steve Lopez. She slipped on her boots, no coat, and told her brother, Ian, "I'll be right back." But it wasn't Steve on the other end of the call. It was David Bagshaw, a 17-year-old football player, and the boy Melissa loved. He was waiting for Stefanie in the snow with an 8-inch kitchen knife. And in a matter of moments, he would brutally stab her 6 times. Stefanie tried to make it back home. She staggered across the street and collapsed in a snowbank, bleeding and gasping for air. Accountant Gavin Shoes Bottom. A passerby named Gavin stopped his car and ran to her side. He held her as she whispered in pain, "It hurts." He asked who stabbed her. Through the agony, Stefanie managed to say a single word, "Bags." And then she pointed up the street. Stefanie was rushed to Toronto East General Hospital. She was pronounced dead, the city's first homicide victim of 2008. To understand this murder, we need to understand who ordered it. Melissa wasn't the type of girl anyone expected to be capable of orchestrating a killing. She lived in Scarborough with her parents, Zoran and Rachel, and her younger brother. Her father was a Siberian immigrant and a mechanic. Her mother worked at a cookie factory. Melissa was a straight-A student, described as considerate, helpful, and independent. But beneath that perfect report card was a teenager consumed by insecurities. She hated her appearance, her nose, her hands, her weight. She struggled with bulimia and would spend half an hour straightening her hair every morning before school. Melissa was desperate for validation. And when she met David Bagshaw, she thought she had found it. David was everything she wasn't: big, loud, impulsive. But he was also violent. He had been diagnosed with ADHD as a child and had a history of aggression and even assaulted his mother at 14. Their relationship was toxic from the start, full of jealousy, obsession, and control. David cheated on her. Melissa installed spyware on his computer to track him. She threatened his exes, calling them sluts and whores. And when she discovered one of these girls was Stefanie Rengel, something inside her snapped. Stefanie had clear, smooth skin, a high brow, and expressive brown eyes. She loved to play with her appearance. One day, she would turn up at school in a tutu and sneakers. The next day, in a pair of heart-printed boxers over tights, all clothes she picked up at a second-hand shop in Kensington Market. She dyed her hair red, blonde, brown, blue, black, wore eyeliner, brightly covered beaded bracelets. She was complete opposite of Melissa. Melissa began to stalk Stefanie online, obsessing over her pictures. She accused her of spreading rumors that Melissa was performing sex acts with David. She hated Stefanie, a girl she never even met. That's when the conversations between David and Melissa grew darker. It was on May 22nd, 2007, Melissa told David online, "I'm going to fucking stab her if I want to, and then I'll just kill her." The next day, David offered to bring her a knife. Melissa replied, "I even brought one to school today. LOL." The LOLs would appear repeatedly in their messages, chilling proof of how disconnected they were from the horrors they were planning. By the summer, their fantasies became a deal. Melissa told David he wouldn't get sex until Stefanie was dead. I have to say, Melissa is very smart for a 15-year-old girl. Very, very smart. Devil's in the details. They talked about kidnapping her, shooting her, and when David hesitated, Melissa taunted him. She even dreamed about it, cutting Stefanie's body up in parts. And still, when asked later, she said she didn't mean it, but her actions tell a completely different story. In October of 2007, David actually went to Stefanie's house. He called her from the driveway, trying to lure her outside. When she came out, he froze. He told her, "Melissa wants me to stab you." Then he dropped his phone and left. Stefanie told her mother immediately, and Patricia called Melissa herself, warning her to stay away. But here's the thing. Melissa wasn't scared. She snapped back at Patricia. "Stefanie has to stop spreading rumors about me," she said. That was the last warning Patricia ever gave her. The following day, Melissa and David were right back on MSN Messenger. "Bang, bang," Melissa wrote. "I need a bang, bang first," David replied. "I want her dead, David." LOL, Melissa answered. "Even if it takes you a week." By December, the plan was back in full motion. Melissa told him to wear gloves and a mask. And then, on New Year's Day, she finally pushed him over the edge. David called Melissa 65 times the night before. He told her he was going to do it. And at 6:08 p.m., he called Stefanie. When she ran outside, David called Melissa one last time. "I see her," he said, and hung up. 15 minutes later, Melissa called Stefanie's phone again. When there was no answer, she smiled. Later that night, David went to Melissa's house. He reenacted the murder for her, and then they had sex. On Facebook later, when a friend asked if she was worried about being a suspect, Melissa simply replied, "Who knows? I wanted her dead. 'Cause I only told you and David. But I never did anything, and neither did David. We fucked tonight." LO. Detectives Steve Ryan and Doug Sampson were on the case that night. They quickly realized that Stefanie had named her killer before dying: Bags. But what they uncovered next stunned even veteran homicide detectives. At 2 a.m., they knocked on Melissa's door. She was questioned. Her calmness was very chilling. When asked if she had ever told David to kill Stefanie, she simply said, "Yes." She expressed no remorse, no emotions. Detective Ryan would later say, "It was chilling. I've never seen a 15-year-old exhibit less emotions." Melissa was eventually charged with first-degree murder. Her digital trail told the story. Over 30,000 pages of chats, texts, and emails. The evidence was undeniable. At trial, Melissa sat motionless in the courtroom, her hair pulled back, expression completely blank. Nobody was home. Her lawyer argued she didn't really mean it, and her words were just teenage melodrama. But the Crown saw through it. Prosecutor Robin Flumberfelt called her the puppet master. And Justice Ian Nordemheimer agreed. He ruled, the puppet master is not less blameworthy than the puppet. Indeed, the master is more culpable, for she sets the wheels in motion and then stands back as the scheme unfolds. And that's exactly what Melissa did the night of January 1st, 2008. Melissa was sentenced as an adult, life in prison with no chance of parole for 7 years. Her criminal record will follow her whole life. David, on the other hand, he would later plead guilty. He wept in court, apologizing to Stefanie's family. He too was sentenced to life with no possibility of parole for 10 years. For Stefanie's parents, Patricia and Adolfo, time stopped that night. Patricia, a Toronto police officer who worked in gang prevention, couldn't return to work. She said in court, I want inner peace, which I believe to come from forgiveness. Adolfo still keeps a Christmas card Stefanie had made him. It is framed in their home. He said, she was smart. She named the killer. She was smart till the day she died. Stefanie's bedroom remains untouched, filled with perfumes, photos, and ribbons. Her mother says she sometimes sneaks in, looking for a trace of her daughter. The smell of her shampoo, a strand of hair. It's the last thing I can hold on to, Patricia has said. I don't go in often because I want to savor it. Jealousy, control, obsession. These were the ingredients that turned a teenage romance into a nightmare. What makes Stefanie Rengel's case so haunting isn't just the brutality. It's the ordinariness. 2 kids, texting, joking, planning a murder from behind a computer screen, where actions felt distant and consequences unreal. But behind every message was intent. Behind every LOL, a life was about to be taken. This case also stands out because it shattered the perception of innocence. Melissa wasn't an adult. She wasn't hardened by life. She was a teenager. But her choices created an irreversible tragedy. Stefanie's murder is remembered not just as a crime, but as a lesson about the power of influence and the danger of toxic love when mixed with immaturity and control. Even though Melissa wasn't wielding the knife, she didn't have to. She was the hand that guided it. The Puppet Master. You've been listening to Season 2 of Verona Investigates Women Who Kill. Every week, we uncover the stories of Canadian women who committed the most unthinkable crimes, sometimes alone, sometimes with a partner, like in today's case, and sometimes with the help of a system that failed to see the warning signs. These cases aren't easy to hear. They challenge our ideas about love, family, justice, and the roles women are expected to play in society. But by talking about them, we remember the victims, we question the headlines, and we ask ourselves, how do we make sure this never happens again? If you found this episode meaningful, please follow, subscribe, and share Verona Investigates with others who want to dig deeper into Canadian true crime. You can find me on YouTube and TikTok at Verona Investigates. Until next week, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, not every story has a happy ending, but every story deserves to be told. Bye.